welcome to this week's episode of Plants with Patrick. This week, we're going to learn how to make a succulent planter for that sunny window in your apartment. So, you're going to start by finding an unglazed terracotta pot, ideally something that water can drain out the bottom through a drainage hole, and also evaporate out the sides because there's no glaze. This one has a little glaze on the top, but usually, or most of it will be able to leave through the sides of the pot as well. And you're going to want your succulents. In this case, I have 4 different kinds of Echeveria, which is a very common kind of succulent that is native to from about Texas through Central America or so. And it's a great plant because they thrive off of periods of neglect and they have very low water needs, and they don't need soil that has very many nutrients either. Echeveria plants in general prefer desert conditions, and that's kind of why you just want a pot that is going to allow all of the water to evaporate in between each time you water it. So, we have our pot, we have our plants. Next, we need our soil. So you're going to want just any kind of succulent or cacti soil mix, which usually includes some mixture of regular potting soil, and, oh, this bag has a little hole. Regular potting soil, and then they've also usually in these mixtures added in a bunch of perlite, maybe some clay or shale, but also a lot of sand. So it's a sandy mixture, a sandy growing medium that has perlite or something in it that will help it drain and not hold on to too much water, just like the desert environment would be. So, the other thing that you will need for this project are some kind of gravel or rocks or sand, and I'll get to that in a minute, but it'll essentially function as mulch. So, we have all of our supplies here. I'm going to use this as a little scoop, and some people, their first step would be to put maybe some of the gravel at the bottom of the pot, just to help, especially if the gravel was a little bit bigger than the gravel that I have, just so that there's an additional drainage layer down there. But I don't think that's essential, so I'm just going to go straight for my cacti soil mix, and I'm going to pour it right into my pot. Echeveria don't have very extensive root systems, and they're not going to get very big, so you don't actually need a big pot for these kinds of plants, and they're never going to get much bigger than they are now. They will many of the varieties will, you might see them bloom, given proper growing conditions, but for the most part, they're just going to stay kind of like they are now, and they may send off a little offshoot, which is really cool, like a little baby version of the plant. And you can actually gently remove that from its mama plant and cultivate a whole other Echeveria just from that. So, but today we're going to just finish with this soil mixture. I'm going to put in just enough that I can work my plants in and not have it overflow. I think this is probably enough. You can see right here. I'm making a mess, as per usual. Okay, so you have your well-draining soil mixture that's very porous. You have your little Echeverias, and now we're going to just plant them. So when I plant these, They're pretty root bound and they're generally pretty dry, and that's fine. Sometimes I kind of just gently massage the roots a little bit just so that they get used to the new shape, and then I place it in the soil mixture, and I want to leave just a small gap between the top of the soil that's around your Echeveria and the top of the pot, because you're going to want to leave room for your mulch. So I'm going to nestle this down in there nice and good. That seems pretty good to me. So when you're composing your succulent planter, you might want to think about the number of plants that you're using. Traditionally, in many different design philosophies, you would use an odd number of plants, like 3 or 5. But I'm making this because this is a little planter that represents my family, and there are 4 people in my family, so I'm doing 4 today, but that's kind of against good design rules. Just in case, somebody out there is like, why isn't he using 3? So here we've got this other one. This one doesn't have as many roots, you'll see. It's a little more delicate, and I don't actually even think I need to do very much to it to loosen it up. So I'll just put this right in here. And they're pretty delicate, so just keep, you can kind of damage the leaves pretty easily. Those 2. I'm going to do my next one. Put that in there. I think I'm going to put it over here, actually. Yeah, it looks good next to that one. So here's where I am so far. And then I'm going to do this 4th one. So I'm going to nestle that right in there. And maybe you want to think about the contrasting heights of each of these plants. Maybe you have one that's a little bit taller. Echeveria this kind of succulent never really gets bigger than 12 inches for the most part. So none of these are going to get super tall. But this one's a little taller, and this rosette one down here is a little bit shorter. And so you'll see I kind of have them all nestled in there, and I might want to fiddle with that just a little bit to get it perfect. I might need to do this one a little better. Okay, so I have my plants. They're situated in my planter, and I might need to add just a tiny bit more soil around them. But if you don't get soil all the way up to the top, even with the soil that's already around each plant, that's okay, because we'll fill in with this gravel, and it will be kind of great because it will allow the water to get around the plant and then also not stay there too long. Okay, so I'm just kind of filling in with a little more dirt around each one, a little more soil mix. Okay, so I think I'm in a good spot where I've got my plants arranged and I've got enough soil around them. Oops, and I just put a bunch of dirt on this tablecloth. That's okay, that's why it's here. Just blowing the soil off a little bit. Kind of gets everywhere. So now I'm going to come in with my mulch, which in this case is some pea gravel. I really like this one. It's really like a light colored rock, and I think it looks really nice next to all of the greens of these plants. So I'm just going to fill in around the plants really gently with these rocks, And this will help with drainage, and it'll help retain just a little bit of water, without being too much. So now that we're talking about water, really, I just want to be very clear that like the main problem with these kinds of plants is people overwatering them. It's kind of like our orchids, it's kind of like a lot of the plants that we've dealt with so far in our houseplant series. But basically, these are plants that would grow in hot, dry climates and in sand, where the water's just going to drain right through. So you want to kind of reproduce that here by being really careful about how much you're watering them. So I generally would say you want to make sure that this pot is going to be in a bright sunny window where it gets at least 5 hours of direct sunlight. They just love the sun. You almost can't give them enough sun. So put it in bright, direct sunlight, and then I would say water it maybe once a month, but make sure each time you water it that you wait for the pot to completely dry out. Like you don't want any water to stay in there in between waterings, because the thing that these plants are most susceptible to is root rot. And rot of all kinds, and that comes from them staying wet for too long. So I'm going to fill these rocks in here, get some right in the center there. Oops, I made a mess. They're not always easy if you've got them all crammed into a little space like I have here. It's not always easy to arrange them perfectly, but I think I'm getting it. Get out of there. So, put these rocks in here. Okay, so I think I have a good amount of rocks, gravel. And let me just turn this around, look at it from different angles. That's always good to do when you're making a potted plant of any kind. Turn it around and see what it looks like from different angles. Okay, I think I'm pretty good to go. Alright, this is looking really pretty. My little family of succulents, of Echeveria. So you can see, that's what it looks like. Oops. Alright, so then aside from overwatering, which is your enemy with this kind of planter, the other thing you have to look out for is mealybug, which is a little, they look like kind of tiny little white, I don't know, just tiny little white bugs. And if you see those, what you're going to want to do is take a Q-tip, put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on it, and just dab it on each of the little bugs that you see, and it will kill them. And just, I think that that's kind of the two most common problems are overwatering and mealybugs. And other than that, this is a very low maintenance plant if you have a sunny windowsill in your house. You can kind of forget about it, which is my favorite kind of plant. So, good luck and happy planting.